Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a main slate that starts at 12:35 Eastern. That's just afternoon. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop a comment below with your home run calls. Yesterday, Frank Del Plato got his home run call of Gorman, so drop another one today. Hopefully, you can get on a streak going. So we do have an interesting slate here. My core plays today are Torres, Sawinski, and Lane Thomas. Overall, I feel like the slate is pretty decent. The pitching is pretty decent. There's some good value pitching, good mid road priced, and some upper tier plays as well. The best team to stack today is going to be the Yankees, but there's a couple other teams that you could definitely look at, like Cleveland and the Dodgers. Also, San Francisco has some low end upside. So we have some good options here. So let's go and get into the pitchers here. We're going to start with Kevin Gossman, who is the top tier play on the slate. He's had 5 great games this season and 2 bad ones. The K rate is top notch in the good ones, and so as long as he plays well, then this is a good matchup for him. He's got a tough matchup, but pretty much all the top tier pitchers do, with one exception. So I think he's a good option to pay up for due to the fact that he's had some really good upside games. Then we'll look at Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. He's got the most bang for your buck on the slate. The matchup isn't ideal against Milwaukee, but he's had 2 bad games this season so far, and he's had some really good games outside of that. He's got the potential for a 40 fantasy point game, but it's going to be somewhat tough against Milwaukee. Luis Castillo is next for Seattle. He's also fairly expensive. It's also a P1 option, but he's not in a good matchup here against Texas, but his floor seems better than it should be. He has the talent to have a really top game, but he hasn't done very well so far in some of these games this season. He's only had 1 game over 30 fantasy points on the year. Then we'll look at Javier for Houston. Now, I really kind of like him being as a contrarian play here. The K rate keeps the hope alive for him fantasy wise. He's been over 6 strikeouts in the last 3 games, which is definitely helpful. Though he is giving up earned runs, which is a little bit rough. But he's got actually pretty good metrics. His floor is a little bit higher than some of the other options. Merrill Kelly is also in play for Arizona. Now, he seems pretty cheap here. He's got a good matchup against Miami. That definitely gives him some utility here. He's cheap enough to be rostered, and he's a contrarian option or a P2 option on the slate. And then we got some kind of Hail Mary plays here, and Peyton Battenfield, who has had a little bit of a rough start to the season, but he had a pretty decent game against Detroit last time he pitched against them. And then he also pitched very well against Minnesota. Despite giving earned runs and a home run in almost every game this season, he's got some low-end upside at this pretty cheap price, though he is high risk, high reward. And then Sean Manaea is also in play for San Francisco. He has not pitched well this season. He's had basically 2 games over 16 fantasy points, one against Kansas City and one against Milwaukee. But he's got good upside here. He's got some interesting utility. He's got a very tiny floor and a very good ceiling. He definitely has certain situations where he's got the metrics. It's a good matchup here for him against Washington, though, like I said, he is high risk, high reward. Moving into our first catchers, we're going to look at Blake Sabol for San Francisco. I really do like his upside today. He's got a good matchup against Gray, and I think he's got a good utility option here as a home run hitter. If he draws a start, he's definitely in play. If he doesn't draw the start, well, Will Smith will be in play for the Dodgers. He's obviously a home run kind of guy, and he's a good fantasy player just in general, just because his batting average is so good. So I like the matchup there as well. Then we'll look at Ryan Noda for Oakland. He's got some really neat upside here at first base. Oakland and the Yankees both have the highest scoring game on the slate, so I really like the upside here. Though it is a little bit harder, I wouldn't necessarily want a big stack of Oakland, but he's definitely somebody I like at the position. Vlad Jr. is also in play for Toronto. He's got some really nice upside here, hitting the ball really well lately, and he's got a good home run potential in this one. Joey Menendez has got a tough-ish matchup against Manaea, but if anybody's going to get at him, it's going to be him, and he's got some nice upside on this slate. I do like kind of a contrarian Washington stack as well with Lane Thomas and Meneses as well. Moving into Rizzo, who has some really top-tier ability here. He's hitting the ball really well the last few games, and we'll see if that can continue here. He's got very nice upside in this matchup. Then we'll look at also consider LeMahieu, Wade Jr., and Cron at this position. There's a lot of good options at first base. For second base, Mookie Betts is in play. He did smash a home run yesterday. He's had 2 in the last 3 games. He's got some really nice upside. His price makes him hard to roster, though. Gabby Torres is also in play here, who I do think is a core play today for the Yankees. He's hitting the ball really well the last few games. I like his upside. His price has come up some, but he's still got enough upside that makes him viable here. Mookie Betts is also, not Mookie Betts, Luis Arias is also in play for Miami. Kind of a high-risk situation, but he hits the ball really well. He does score fantasy points, but it's hard to, he doesn't get a ton of fantasy points, which is a problem here. But he definitely has some utility in the slate. Moving into third base, we'll look at J.D. Davis, who's hitting the ball extremely well so far this season. San Francisco looks like a pretty solid team on the slate as kind of a contrarian stack, and so I definitely think that they're worthwhile to take a look at. DJ LeMahieu is also in play for the Yankees. He's got really nice metrics for this matchup. Got good home run potential, even though he's not typically a guy that hits a ton of home runs. He's got nice upside in this matchup. Bregman for Houston is a high-risk, high-reward play. He hasn't hit the ball very well this season, but the last 2 games he's got 4 hits, and hopefully he looks like he might be out of a slump and he can get to hitting the ball a lot better. Chris Taylor is also in play for the Dodgers. Somewhat of a cheap option and a Hail Mary option. He has home run or bust potential here, and so he's definitely in play on this particular slate. Moving into the shortstops, Chris Taylor can also play here. But Ahmad Rosario for Cleveland is in play. He's not really a home run hitter, but he can get on base. He can get some steals and stuff, and so that gives him some utility here as a decently priced option. You can also consider Bo Bichette and Trey Turner here. Moving into the outfield, we will start with Bryce Harper as a top play, I guess you might say. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly to start his season. Only played a few games so far. He's got home run potential every time he comes to bat. Mike Trout is also in play for LA Angels. Tough matchup against Javier, but Trout has big time upside, though he hasn't hit a home run in a few games, and so I feel like he's probably due. Then Aaron Judge, who looks like he's got some great metrics for this matchup. Probably my favorite matchup for him in a little while. He's got really big upside here, and he has a nice situation where he should be able to get a home run. It's been quite a few games since he's had one, so I like his upside here. Then we'll look at Chris Bryant, who's also in play, though he is a little bit riskier for Colorado. He's hitting the ball decently well, and he's got the upside, in the situation for a home run. Then we'll look at Lane Thomas, who I have as a core play here. He's just too cheap for his potential. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly, having a nice streak of games with hits. He's got some good upside. His price is cheap enough that he's extremely viable to help you pay up for some other options. Jack Sawinski is also a core play, which he has been just really good at hitting home runs so far this season. Now, he is kind of slumping the last 7 or 8 games, but he definitely has potential here, and he's a decent play on the slate at a good price. Randall Grichuk is also in play for Colorado. He's hitting the ball really well despite the fact that he's actually better on the road than at home, which just seems so bizarre, but it's only a small sample. So he's got some nice upside here, though, hitting the ball pretty decently and has good utility for for a stolen base as well. Then we'll look at Taylor Ward, who really hasn't been great yet this season, but he's starting to hit the ball a little bit better the last few games, and he's got some upside in this matchup. And then finally, last but not least, Jock Peterson for San Francisco. He's got some really good metrics for this game. A little bit high risk, high reward, but has the potential to be a good play on this slate. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.